Hello and good evening. My name is Clifford Clark, and this is a component to my advocacy assignment for Dr. Trina Shanks at the University of Michigan School of Social Work, of which I am a Master's of Social Work student candidate. Today I want to talk to you guys about a topic that's of interest and concern to me, and that is the zero tolerance policy. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the policy, and it is a bias that I'm going to come from, of course, because it's my opinion, and based on my research, it's a well-founded opinion. The zero tolerance policy, or as one article refers to it as the zero intelligence policy, is essentially taking over and imposing severe and excessive ramifications for its offenders. It's a non-negotiable policy that levies ultimate punitive action on its citizens, even children of young ages that violate rules or laws of drug or weapon possession, regardless to circumstance, context, rationale, or reasonability. For example, I'm going to read an article to you very briefly, and this will kind of give you a backdrop of what we'll discuss. This is how excessive this policy is, and I just completely believe that it needs to be changed and revamped. So you have an article here says this is by the Delaware Dem on October 6, 2009. The name of the article is called Zero Tolerance to Zero Intelligence. Zachary is a 6-year-old boy who was a first grader at Downs Elementary School in Newark, Delaware. On Tuesday, September 29th, Zachary brought his camping utensil to school to use at lunch. It has a spoon, a fork, a bottle opener, and a knife. So kind of a Swiss Army situation here. And as he was getting off the bus, a teacher asked him what he was doing, what he was holding in his hand, rather. Zachary showed it to her and explained why he brought it. He said to eat his lunch. The teacher confiscated the tool, the utensil, and gave it to the principal, at which point Zach was suspended from school pending a school district hearing. The Christina School District Committee recommended that he be alternatively placed at the Douglas School, which is a school of reform for juvenile delinquents. This is the same school where they place children who have had severe behavioral problems and who are guilty of such offenses as assault and battery, rape, drug offenses, concealing a deadly weapon, and of that variety. Since there is absolutely zero chance that they will allow this to happen, which are the people who are advocating for justice in this area, the only hope for Zachary being able to rejoin his friends at Downs Elementary is if the Christina School District Superintendent Marcia Lyles or the Christina School Board intervenes to overturn the committee's decision. Now, here's the emphasis. Did you realize that the boy is only 6 years old? He's 6 years old, and he is being turned over to a school with people that are not of his behavioral grade. Okay, so this is the flaw of the policy, is that it will take a mild offender, exaggerate the severity in case of that situation, and classify them in a lump of people that are more serious criminals or offenders. And then you have this integration, this integration of convicts, if you will, and it's not exactly a fair shake. And that kind of introduces all sorts of problems to the person who is innocently been placed in this environment. So now, on a more extreme scale, here is the system. And when I say a more extreme scale, I mean a more serious offense of somebody who's older, or who does something a little bit more significant than just having a Swiss Army knife in their pocket at school. Someone who maybe has a minor drug offense, like carrying marijuana, or maybe even something more serious like a narcotic, crack cocaine, a PCP, meth, whatever the case is, or even having a gun on them for protection, or whatever the case is. Here's what the system in place right now turns that zero tolerance policy turns over to even the modest offenders over to. Here's what the system is. In 1986, the U.S. Congress, they passed a law rather, called the Anti-Drug Abuse Act. All right. And this act was a response to the war on drugs. All right, so among other things, they changed the system of federal supervised release from a rehabilitative system into a punitive system. So the federal supervised release essentially is a response in law for those convicts who are released out of prison back into society, but they're under a supervised release plan, if you will. So it's further incarceration. All right. That initially was instituted to be a rehabilitative system in terms of enhancing, or I should say, chastising. That's another a wrong word. But challenging and educating the person in their era of wrong to the intent that it would put them back in society more knowledgeable and more responsible. That's the rehabilitative system that was initially used for. Now it's punitive. It's punitive. So now it's not necessarily, the emphasis is no longer rehabilitative. It's now to correctively punish you for what you're doing and to essentially suffocate by way of fear and corrective action the want or the potential or desire to be a repeat offender in an area. All right. And I don't exactly subscribe to the latter versus the former. But federal probation and supervised release, I'm going to speak to that for a second. Probation and supervised release both are imposed at the point of sentencing. So once you offend, you get either probation or supervised release. Now, the difference between the two is that probation is given as an alternative for imprisonment, whereas supervised release is imposed in addition to imprisonment. All right. So again, it's a further stroke of incarceration. Now, public defenders are saying that supervised release, which was originally supposed to help the reintegration process of convicts into society, is in fact and instead facilitating reincarnation. All right. And one of the ways that's happening is people who are of mild offense are getting lumped in with people are of more severe and heinous offenses, and you're having this integration and this influence of behaviors and social skills, or not skills, but social influences, social behaviors. When you're integrated with that, you kind of are who you hang around, so to speak. So what's going on is these people who were once mild offenders are now inspired by way of what their environment is encouraging them to do, or encouraging them to be inclined to do more so. They're being released and actually are now more probable offenders in the area that they initially were just mildly guilty of an infraction. So it's a flawed system. It's a flawed system, to say the least. Now, the Senate report on the SRA suggests that judges would only impose supervised release to offenders who presented the greatest risk of recidivism. All right. But in practice, almost all defendants and convicts sentenced to federal prison are additionally sentenced to supervised release. According to the journal, the shadow sentencing is what we looked at. Shadow sentencing, the imposition of federal supervised release, north of 95% of people that are sentenced to a term of imprisonment in the federal system are also sentenced to a term of supervised release. Now, the average term of supervised release, actually, this is going to give you a wow factor for perspective here. It adds $13,000. This is the average term of supervised release. Adds $13,000 to the cost of incarcerating an individual. All right. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm sure that our government can use $13,000 per individual on average at a rate of north of 95% of people who get incarcerated. We could use that money for something else. Build better institutions, stricter law enforcement, perhaps maybe pay our police officers and law enforcement more money. I don't know. There's tons of stuff that we could do, but we could be doing something other than ratifying the incarceration extremes for people who may not even need this excessive type of reaction and corrective action. So, pretty much, this is the issue, and I think that it's worth, us social workers to look into, to begin to advocate against, and to reevaluate this. And maybe we need to renegotiate some policies altogether around surrounding this issue, because it's impacting our society in more than one way, and it has residual implications of negative impact. And so, I'm off my soapbox. So comment, and